Thank you, everybody. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Jill Swim. Jill recently affiliated with NP Dodge Realty Company, and she also has her own photography business. And in the email newsletter I sent out, there's a link to her website that you should check that out. She's got a very interesting website that promotes both businesses, actually. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jill. Jill, thank you for being here today.
Yeah, I definitely thank you for having me today. I'm excited to kind of share a little bit about my journey to where I am now. I'm really passionate about talking about entrepreneurship and just everything that I've been through, I guess, since I've started in my journey. So I am kind of a wanderer, but I will promise to try to stay on track today. My name's Jill Swim. I am a realtor with NP Dodge, and I've had my real estate license since 2018. For those of you that don't know how it works to be a real estate agent, we are independent contractors. So we do work for ourselves, but the state of Nebraska requires that we hang our license at a licensed brokerage. So actually just at the beginning of 2021, I switched over to NP Dodge. NP Dodge has been around since the 1800s. It's one of the first real estate entities in the state of Nebraska. So they're a really successful company. They're primarily in the Omaha area and then into Iowa. But actually back in November, I was approached by another realtor, and she had started working at NP Dodge, and they kind of wanted to grow into the Lincoln market a little bit. So this other realtor had been looking for really like-minded individuals to form a team with. So just at the beginning of the year, we launched a team of 4 real estate women. We're all very like-minded. We're all moms and wives and have busy lives. But most importantly, we really share the same vision. Real estate is such a competitive market and it's so cutthroat. And we happen to be 4 individuals that really believe in supporting others, even if that means that there are competition, and really working together. So by forming this team, it was really important to us that we really embrace what it meant to be a team, and not just among, the 4 of us, but also with everyone else that we work with. Real estate transactions have enough hardships all by themselves. There's so many moving pieces to them, and there's so many people involved. Most real estate transactions has 2 realtors. Usually there's one representing a buyer and one representing a seller. And then we have a lender involved and inspectors, appraisers, contractors. So what was the most important thing to us is that there's no reason why all of us involved can't work together like a team to make sure that we're getting the best for our clients. So I think that it's kind of an exciting thing to be a part of because being an independent contractor can be really isolating sometimes. So just having a team of individuals, then we can pool our resources together. And I hope that we can continue to kind of lead the way for realtors in upholding integrity and respect in this industry. So we're excited to kind of launch that and see where we go with that. I actually decided today that I really wasn't going to talk much about real estate. I feel that most people probably know what we do. And if not, I'm happy to chat about that at the end. But I can guarantee that most of you probably know a realtor or 2 as well. There are quite a few of us out there. So I actually decided today that I was going to talk about something a little more personal, I guess, and kind of my journey in entrepreneurship. I have already in my life pursued a dream and started a business and also closed the chapter on that as well. So I'm kind of excited to talk about that, even though it's kind of a grim tale sometimes. Prior to real estate, I owned a photography studio and business for 10 years, which at this point is actually over half of my adult life so far. Jill Swim Photography was really a dream at one time. And the most important lessons that I have in life and in business came from those 10 years and some really hard lessons that I learned in being a young business owner, and so many lessons learned from learning how to know when it's time to walk away from something. just to give you a little history about myself, I was born and raised in outside of York, Nebraska. My dad is a crop farmer. My mom left the corporate world when I was about 10 years old, and she bought a small business in town where she makes ribbons and trophies and awards. So needless to say, I spent most of my life working for my parents, one or the other at some point. And it really taught me at an early age. I guess I really didn't even realize what it meant to be an entrepreneur at the time. It was literally just part of me and my siblings' lives. We worked for our parents and we learned what it was like to sacrifice, not just for our family, but also for our business sometimes. So it just kind of came natural to all of us, I think. But if you were to ask me in high school what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, I really could never put it into words. I think I just felt like we naturally all wanted to work for ourselves and that we all wanted to start businesses. I just felt like that was kind of the ultimate dream, I guess. So naturally, after college, I ended up in the corporate world anyway. And it really ended up being everything that I didn't want in a career. And I was blessed to see that, I guess, at an early age. I was in my early 20s and I was getting married and getting ready to start a family. And I knew that I couldn't stay there. And I truly felt like I was meant for something else or made for something different. So I really took a hard look at what could I do to achieve the goals that I set out to do. And I really didn't have goals. All I knew is that I didn't want to be stuck at the 9 to 5. And I wanted to be flexible when I had kids and be able to pick them up from daycare if they were sick without feeling stressed out about it and not having to miss their events. At that time, I think I was 21, and that's actually the first time that I went to a real estate seminar to find out what it took to be a real estate agent. And I remember I drug my friend along to it, and we were young. And I think that I sat in that class with a lot of people that were probably my age now, probably in their 30s. And it was really intimidating to me. They talked a lot about sales, and that was just something that I didn't realize doesn't have to mean sales in the way that we all think that sales is. People think that salespeople are always knocking on doors and dressed in suits and that we just check these boxes to get business. And I think I was really intimidated by the idea of that at that age, and especially working commission. I think that was all too intimidating for me. So I actually decided to pick up a hobby that I had when I was younger, and I bought myself a camera, and I completely just immersed myself in this decision I made to eventually start a photography business. To be honest, I think that being a photographer seemed very unrealistic. There were very few people that actually were paid for being artsy, especially where I came from. I think we had one or two photographers in town that were very successful. But aside from that, I didn't know people that sold art or that made money doing the arts and the crafts. So I don't know that I ever actually thought that it would take off, but I really did jump in head first. And I spent hours and hours and hours really learning the craft itself. But I was reading books and I was watching videos and I was staying up all hours of the night to learn new ways to edit. And I was really focusing more so on learning to be a good photographer, and not so much about learning how to run a business properly. But my first child was born, and after she turned 1, I was able to walk away from the corporate world and pursue this dream of being a photographer. By year number 5, business was really booming. I was often booking 1 to 2 weddings a weekend, not every weekend, but I would say I would do 3 to 4 a month sometimes. And weddings are very exhausting. Even if I had just one Saturday wedding, I would spend all Friday night, double, triple, quadruple checking all my equipment, my batteries, and getting everything ready. And then I would spend 12-hour days at a wedding and a couple hours driving sometimes. And then I would come home Sunday or I would come home Saturday night, but Sunday my body was just tired. I always laughed about when I brought assistants along. I always told them not to take off their shoes, because if they do, their feet are going to swell up and they're not going to be able to put them back on. So I said, wait till we get in the car, or you're going to regret that you did that. So it was really exhausting. But I was doing well with it. Things were going really great. But I also look back at this part of my life, and if I were to name this chapter, I would call it Ignorance is Bliss, because at the time I didn't know what I didn't know. And when you're new to something and it seems to be flowing well on its own, you don't always stop to take a look at the things that you should, that are important to really growing yourself in the future. During this same time, technology really enabled so many opportunities for photographers. There was more online education, there was more YouTube videos and workshops, and we could follow behind the scenes with photographers that all over the world. And all of this seemed really amazing at first. But it didn't take long before I started to question my skills, because I could always find somebody that was better than me. And I started questioning the equipment I was using, because there was always somebody selling something new. I would question really my prices even. I started to really question my value. It kind of enabled newer people to jump into this career quicker. And I know that there are people that came before me that probably said that about my group of photographers that came in. But with technology and social media and being able to advertise that way, I then had to experience the new group of photographers coming in, and they were learning quicker, and they were better sooner. And I saw that. And for some reason, I had a hard time putting value on those 5 years I had already spent doing this. That I started to question the value in myself, because I would always find someone cheaper too. And I would have clients that would pick somebody because they were cheaper, or I would lose clients over, and I would wonder why. And I would pick myself apart, and the comparison game really got thick during those years. There was really so much noise all around me that I really felt like I just completely lost myself. I was not shooting the way I wanted to shoot anymore. Everything I was doing had a little bit of somebody else in it. And I just really lost kind of everything that I had worked so hard for all of those 5 years. I would say over the next couple of years, the dream really had become a burden. It was a hobby, and then I was making money at it, but I was working more than I'd ever worked before. I remember during photography, I posted a quote that said, and I liked the quote then, but it was, entrepreneurs put in 80 hours for them working for themselves, so they don't have to work 40 hours for someone else. And I thought that was it meant so much at the time. But it's kind of one of those quotes now that make me cringe a little bit, because I think there are a lot of us that work ourselves to death, and something that was once a dream really does become a burden, and for the wrong reasons. So this definitely was the point in my career that I really needed to sit down and come up with an actual solid business plan on how to move forward, and come up with a stronger mission, and really pick apart that why I decided to do it in the first place, and why I would continue to do it. And this is a time that I really should have taken control of my business instead of sitting back. And I just kind of kept thinking that if this was my dream, and if I loved this enough, that it was going to work out, that one of these days this was all going to pay off, everything that I was doing. I would say that the last couple of years of my photography business were really some of the worst. No one else saw it. It wasn't the worst to anyone else, but to me, it was really an internal battle. I was still successful as I defined success at that time. People still loved my work, and they still hired me to do their jobs, and they still paid me, and I was making money. I was even speaking at workshops once in a while. I really had this facade going that I kind of was living the dream, I guess. But inside, I truly felt like I was starting to go through the stages of death or grief, or whatever kind of, tragic, terrible transition that we go through in life. It really was a dark time in my life and my career. This had literally been something I dreamt about, and I loved photography so much that I just kept telling myself that, maybe I was burnt out and that I needed a break. So I would kind of cut back on business. I would sign up for these elaborate workshops, like hoping that it would spark some kind of life change for me again, and that my heart would come back to this. I just really couldn't wrap my brain around the thought of giving this up. I had spent at the time probably 9 years pouring myself into all of this. And I felt almost selfish and ungrateful, because I think there's so many people in life that maybe don't get the chance to experience living out a dream like this. And I thought that, maybe this was the only chance that I got. And I had a really hard time really thinking about closing the doors on something that was this big. It would actually end up that my father-in-law got sick in October, which is my busiest time of the year. He was put on hospice, and that was the start of the 2 busiest weeks of my entire year. Everybody loves having fall photos taken. So sadly, this was also the first time in almost 10 years that I felt like I had an excuse, a good enough excuse to take time for myself, to ask people to reschedule and to postpone, and to even push some of those clients off on some of my other photographer friends. And I couldn't believe the weight that was lifted off of me, which is such a weird thing during that time, because we clearly had a lot of sadness going on in our own lives, but I had been able to breathe better than I could in years. That really probably was the most defining moment for me deciding to maybe pivot in my career, and maybe go back to photography being more of a hobby again. It was a hard pill to swallow, and it was hard to even say it out loud, I think, because everybody that had supported me had seen how much time and energy I had put into getting to where I was. I mean, even my husband had sacrificed so much to stay home and be the sole provider for the kids on the weekends when I was out shooting weddings. So it was really tough to break that news to people. So I gave myself a few months to really reflect kind of on the past 10 years and to really make a solid plan for the future. I was only 32 at the time, and my kids were still little, and I was determined not to go back to the corporate America or to work for someone else. And I really had to redefine what success meant to us. I think that when I started photography, I so badly just wanted to be able to stay home with my kids during the day. So that meant I just needed to make money. But I had to redefine success in so many ways. And I had to really dig deep to find my why on the next chapter of my life. I did decide to sign up for real estate classes, and I got my real estate license a couple of months later, and I really hit the ground running. Success seemed to come so much quicker and easier for me in this industry. I know I haven't been at it long, but the first 3 years have been wonderful. I know it's partly because my idea of success no longer centered around, just making a living, but I'm creating a life as well. But I've taken so many hard truths from those 10 years. People have asked me before if I regret it. I don't. There's a lot of things that make me sad that, the childhood part where I wanted to stay home with my kids, that part's over. And I don't know that it was what I wanted it to be during the time, because I was so busy and so overworked that I may have been home with them during the day, but I don't know that it was the quality time that I had thought that I had envisioned spending with them. But at the same time, I know that if I hadn't pursued this dream, I think that my dad just told me the other day when I was talking about what to talk about today, and he said it is kind of unique that at such a young age, you did have the opportunity to close the chapter of a dream. And it's weird when people say that it was an opportunity, because it took a really long time for me to see it that way. But it certainly it was a great opportunity. Those 10 years were wonderful. In hindsight, they were wonderful because they have set me up for so much more success here in the future. So I really just wanted to kind of end it with sharing some of the hard truths that I learned, and some of the major lessons that I brought with me. And I think that if you are a business owner, or especially you probably feel some of these a lot. And I think they're just really good reminders. First of all, and I know this sounds really harsh, but no one cares about your business as much as you care about your business. That's a hard one because, your friends and family, they won't always support you in the way that you expect them to. And that's okay. You will find that your biggest cheerleaders sometimes are people that you never expect. I have friends that go with other realtors, and sometimes it stings a little bit, but I always have to ground myself, and I tell myself that I probably dodged a bullet. Even though they're friends, sometimes it's best not to work with them anyway. Sometimes I think that it's I had some of my biggest supporters now. Actually, one of them, who has sent me probably the most business, hasn't even been a client of mine. We just kind of met through business, and she really believes in what I do and how I do it. And she's probably sent me more clients than anyone, and I haven't even worked for her yet. So it's okay that you learn to find your tribe and you learn to stick with them. Also, value your time and energy. I think that this can mean so many things. I could talk about this for 30 minutes in itself, but just take time for yourself. You have to set boundaries. You can only give your clients the best of you if you are giving yourself the best of you. I drop my kids off at school every day and I pick them up. That is usually an hour in the morning, an hour in the afternoon that I'm not really available. If you send me a text, I usually can text back quicker. If you call me during that time, I usually send a text and say, hey, I'll call you back in an hour. We got after school meltdown going on right now. So it's really important I really think back to photography and how I missed, so many things for business. I would show up to a session sometimes, and it's just so weird how we don't even ask for the things that we want. Somebody would schedule a session, and then I would realize that I had a daughter's soccer game going on. So I would show up at the session and I wouldn't want to reschedule. I didn't want to, do that to my clients. So I would show up and somehow we'd be talking about my daughter having a soccer game, and they would feel awful that I didn't tell them and ask them to reschedule. And, we truly we aren't going to get things if we don't ask for them. And I think we just really need that's probably one of my biggest things that it's been difficult to do, is to really value my time and my energy. I say no to things all the time. I don't do every networking event. I'm actually very introverted. So I really have to really rein in on my energy. And I really only give to the things that matter the most to me. So that's my clients and my family. And then there's some other things outside of what I do that I enjoy being a part of. Invest in outsourcing. If you can't afford to outsource now, put it in your business plan. But I did everything in photography. I did my bookkeeping, I did my editing, I did my marketing, and when you spread yourself so thin, you have a really hard time being really good at one thing when you're doing everything. So that's something in real estate that's been really important to me. If you can't afford to outsource now, find some partners that you can swap services with, or just find some people to bounce ideas off of until you can afford to start hiring someone to do those things that are really taking away from what you're best at. Be genuine. This is something that I feel like I've done well throughout my entire life, but when that's really one of your main values, it seems to just make everything else come so much easier. I really do care about what I do, and it's important to care about who you're doing it with. I take the time to get to know my clients. When my client's son is doing a fundraiser for baseball, I try to send some money his way, or if there's some fun events to go to, I try to really be a part of them. I think that if we look at what we do as being a part of something bigger than ourselves, it just seems, I don't know, it opens a door, opens a door in so many ways. Treat your business like a business. This one was really tough in photography because it was a hobby at one point. And I didn't treat it like a business until it was almost too late. So that's definitely something that I think they will tell you to do that in business school anyway. Start with a business plan. even if you don't think that it's going to take off into a business, I think it's so important to just have a blueprint of kind of where you want to go with something. And if, I do one every year. So about November, December, I do a new business plan, and I kind of look back at the old one to see if it really panned out like I had planned. And I'm not a list follower. I'm not a great plan follower even, but I think just once a year, having kind of reining in your why and your plan is just, it just helps kind of keep you focused. Do what's best for you. This was the most difficult part of becoming a realtor. I was this artsy person, and I was moving into it was a sales career in real estate. I soaked up all the basics of sales about door knocking and cold calling and making all these touches with people and networking. I took all of those pieces, and I wasn't planning to reinvent the wheel, but I kind of decided to build my own wheel with those little nuggets that I was getting from someone else. I do those things in different ways. I do a lot of social media. I do, instead of networking events, I like to just really find a few things in the community that I enjoy being a part of, or a few groups, to really put my energy into those things. I have a shirt that says homegirl on it that I wear to showings sometimes. I don't always look the part necessarily, but I think that, even I remember when I had one of my first, I would say probably Gen Z clients, really young millennial, and they called me, and I wasn't able to answer the phone, so I sent them a text, and they said, "Oh, wow, I didn't know realtors sent text messages." And I think people have this idea that we're very traditional, and that we've always done things the same way, and many of them have, and many of them are successful at it. But I really like to kind of conform to what makes my clients most comfortable, but in the same way, doing it in a way that I'm comfortable with as well. The last thing that I like to talk about, just giving back, that's with our team. I like patting other people on the back, whether you're my competitor or not. I really do think that the more education and the more help that you give others really does bring in the highest yield. So I think that that's some of the most important things that I do. I have people message me all the time saying, "Hey, we want to sell our house for sale by owner. I hate to ask you these questions, but," and I don't mind helping them. As a matter of fact, I used to, and I haven't done it recently just because houses aren't on the market very long. But when I first started, for sale by owners lasted a little bit longer. So I took around these bright pink envelopes, and I had bits of information in it. I told them that, "Hey, I looked over your listing, and here's kind of what I see, and maybe here's some changes you can make." And agents just thought like this was insane. But I was amazed by how much return I got on that. I never got their business, but they would refer me to friends that wanted realtors. They said, "Hey, I didn't use this realtor, but she was really helpful for me." I think and I also gave them a little Norwex rag, which aren't very cheap, actually. It was like my biggest investment in the beginning, that said, "Here's for last minute showings to wipe down your surfaces." And I put so much into just helping others that I think that that's how I've seen such a big return just in my first 3 years. The last thing I like is just a quote that just came up recently that I really love. And it's that beginnings often hide themselves in endings. I am a part of Arrive Co-working, and there's a lot of women there that are starting businesses, or they want to talk to women about starting businesses. And I love this quote because I think that most people's biggest fear is, what if it doesn't work out? And I think this is kind of where I have the opportunity to share my journey, because I can tell you what happens when it doesn't work out. And you live through it, and there's probably a beginning hidden somewhere in there. So yeah, that is it.
Well, Jill, thank you so much. That is a great story. And a couple of things you said really hit home with me. I've had the opportunity to start several businesses and then leave at some point. And you invest so much time and energy that when you walk away, I think there is kind of a mourning period you go through, almost as if someone had passed away, even though it's not a person, it's a business, but you've got so much in it that it really does hurt. So there's a good lesson in there, and it you shared a quote. I have on my bulletin board a quote that I love, and it's from Nelson Mandela, and he says, "I never lose. I either win or learn." And I think there's so much truth in that. So even though you think it hurt to walk away from the photography business, you learned, and you learned some very valuable lessons from that. So anyway, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And does anybody else have any questions for Jill?
I've got a quick one. If you had less economic pressure, would you still be a photographer?
I don't think so. I know people ask me that a lot too. Would there be anything that would have changed it? And I guess I'm just kind of one of those people that believes everything kind of was supposed to happen the way it happens. I don't think that I would have. I think that there's also an element of creativity that comes with that I really lost. It showing up to sessions and there did take a level of creative energy that I needed for those. And I think because I was doing so many of them, I really I was just depleted of that. I do think that if I probably didn't have to shoot as much as I did, maybe I wouldn't have lost it as soon as I did. But now looking back, I just can't imagine maintaining that creative energy for 40, 50 years. I just don't think I could have done it.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I got a question.
Yeah.
What is kind of your business plan moving forward, I guess, I know you're trying to grow in the Lincoln market with NP Dodge, but is there anything else outside of real estate maybe that you're exploring?
Not really. I mean, at some point, when I get to the point where I want to work less and make more, I would like to get into real estate investing a little bit down the road, probably 5-year or more plan for me. I'm kind of in a sweet spot right now where I feel like I'm not even the biggest earner in Lincoln or even close to Nebraska. I'm a higher producer, but not super high, I guess. I sell anywhere between 6 and 9 million a year. That's not huge in the grand scheme of things, but really with my kids at their age and the amount of work that I can put into those clients, I'm kind of just happy where I am right now. As far as growing, I think even just outside of my real estate, I would like to be doing 30 transactions every year consistently. And that's kind of what I've been doing. And it's kind of the spot that I like. But I also kind of just want to grow kind of in more into the community and being a part of things here in the community, I think, right now.
Cool.
And Jill, if that is a future aspiration to be an investor, keep Josh's name in mind, okay? Because he's got some expertise there.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Jill? If not, Jill, I again would like to thank you for taking the time to be with us. And please feel free to join us whenever your schedule permits. We'd love to have you back on the call whenever you can be here.
Sounds good.
But thank you, and I wish you luck with NP Dodge, and your story is a good one, so thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining our call today, and next week, join us for Dr. Todd Johnson with Access Family Medicine. With that, I'll let everybody get back to their day, but thanks again for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you.